We must forge a path that allows us to move beyond our history and identify common solutions to better protect our communities. For our part, the first step in this process is for the law enforcement profession and the IACP to acknowledge and apologize for the actions of the past and the role that our profession has played in society's historical mistreatment of communities of color.
Those words from the head of the largest police organization in the U.S. getting a lot of attention. The International Association of Chiefs of Police formally apologizing there with the words of Terrence Cunningham, acknowledging the deep-seated generational mistrust between minorities and the police. I want to get more on this and want to get a take from retired LAPD police sergeant, also the author of Black and Blue, Cheryl Dorsey. Cheryl, great to have you with us on this. When you first heard those words from Terrence Cunningham, what did you think?
Well, you know, it was a great first step, and so I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but there's so much more to do, and so understanding that he had a prepared speech and he knew what he was going to speak on, it would have been nice had he talked a little further. He says the first step is the apology. I would have liked to have heard what steps 2 and 3 might look like, because what I believe should happen next is some accountability. This is what I'm hearing from victim families routinely, is that there's no price to pay for those errant officers who violate policy and or law and use deadly force when it was unjustified. And listen, we're not talking about something that happened hundreds of years ago. We're talking about a very recent past, and officers are given the gift of resignation. They don't suffer any financial penalty, and then they live to offend again.
So how do you start to change those things, Cheryl? To your point, you wanted to hear more about how to change them. But having been in the role as a police officer, seeing what happens now on the other side, where do you start?
Well, you start by holding those who violate policy and use deadly force as a first resort and not a last resort, as we're taught, accountable. You fire them. You create a paper trail so they don't get to move to another police department like Tim Lohman did when he was fired from one department and went on to Cleveland and then shot and killed Tamir Rice. You don't let that officer enjoy a 30-day paid vacation, which is how it's viewed by the public. There's no substantive change within the department in terms of policy, because by and large, those police chiefs that are in that room are going to go back to their fiefdoms, and they're going to continue to speak as though the thing that we saw on video did not really happen the way we believe it happened. And then it's further exacerbated by police union leaders like Pat Lynch, who hasn't seen a shooting that he can't get excited about.
So then are you saying that the apology really rings hollow, that it doesn't do anything? Is this just some, in your view, is this just a way to perhaps placate people?
Listen, I don't want to question his integrity or sincerity, but for me, it rings hollow, because we have yet to see a conviction. We've yet to see any real liability on the part of the officer who uses deadly force in a way that is inappropriate. And so until that happens, until a police officer can no longer shoot a man who's laying prone on the ground with his arms extended, and then when that gentleman asks, in the case of Charles Kinsey, why did you shoot me? He says, I don't know. Until stuff like that is fixed and there's a real consequence, then there's going to continue to be the kind of angst in my community.
The angst will continue to be there, but could this statement, could it in fact be a better first step? Could it start the conversation on a broader level?
It's certainly a first step. And so now let's talk about what needs to happen next. And so if you just talk about, as he does, and maybe there was more that was said, and we only get a soundbite, that there needs to be respect on both parts, I give you that. But I haven't heard anything about what's going to happen to those officers who use deadly force first and not last. I haven't heard what's going to happen to those officers who manufacture and create probable cause and reasonable suspicion, and in some cases lie, as in the case of Sam DuBose's murderer, Ray Tenzing, or Walter Scott's murderer, Michael Schlager. What's going to happen really, for real, at the end of the day? And that's what I want to hear.
Cheryl Dorsey, appreciate you joining us with your perspective today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.